Good afternoon, Mr. President, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. President, for asking me to address such a prestigious audience. Also in Ratner's, we sell gifts as well as jewellery. Things like a teapot for £2. Or we've got this imitation book that you lay on your coffee table. The pages don't actually open, but they have beautiful curled up corners with imitation antique dust. I know you might say it's not in the best possible taste, but we sold 250,000 of them last year. We also do this nice sherry decanter. It's cut glass, and it comes complete with 6 glasses on a silver-plated tray that your butler could bring you in and serve you drinks on. And it's really only cost £4.95. People say to me, how can you sell this for such a low price? I say, because it's total crap. We even sell a pair of earrings for under £1, gold earrings as well. And some people say, well, that's cheaper than a prawn sandwich from Marks and Spencer's. But I have to say, the sandwich will probably last longer than the earrings, but anyway.
So let's deal with the elephant in the room straight away. 30 years ago in April, it'll be 30 years in April, that I made that infamous speech at the Albert Hall when I was invited by the Institute of Directors to make a speech in front of 6,000 people. And I was very excited about that. And I was told to turn up at gate 19 of the Albert Hall to report there 10 minutes before my speech. But I was a bit nervous, so I turned up 2 hours before the speech. And there was a reception committee waiting for me at gate 19, including top politicians and royalty. And I'm thinking, this is a bit over the top. Why have I got this sort of reception committee? But of course, it wasn't for me. It was for the main speaker of the day, who is President de Klerk of South Africa. But they were very polite, and they just said, oh, you know, hello, Gerald, and all that sort of stuff. And then President de Klerk arrived, and of course, they all came out for him as well. So I was sort of listening to President de Klerk before my speech, and his speech was fantastic. And he made a very, very important announcement on the day. He said that he was going to end apartheid, which was quite an important thing to say, because South Africa had had apartheid for many, many years. And he was going to end racial segregation in South Africa. And of course, that meant that we would no longer boycott South Africa in terms of trade or in terms of sport. And he highlighted the fact that he's looking forward to his fast bowlers coming over and bowling bouncers at our batsmen. So it's quite a major announcement. But what do you think made the headlines the next day? President de Klerk ending segregation, racial segregation, or Gerald Ratner making a joke about a sherry decanter? Well, you got it. It was the Sun and the Mirror talking about my joke. Of course, they, in their disingenuous way, they said that I said all my jewellery's crap and all that sort of stuff, when in fact I said it about one item, a sherry decanter. I also said that we sell a pair of earrings, which was cheaper than a prawn sandwich, 99 pence, but the sandwich would probably last longer than the earrings. And I probably would have got away with that joke, but using the word crap as a jeweller was not a good idea, so I don't blame anybody else. I accept by implication if you call one of your items that you sell crap, then people assume that everything you sell is crap. And not a day goes by 30 years later that I'm not reminded of this on Twitter or elsewhere. But it's worth remembering that on that day, or the day before that speech at the Albert Hall, I had announced profits of £125 million. And the brokers were going for 200 million in the current year, which was a hell of a lot of profit actually in 1991. It's probably about £1 billion profit today. And there isn't any retailer around today that is making that sort of profit. So it's worth remembering that, not that anybody does. It's a bit like saying that Titanic had hundreds of miles of pleasurable sailing before it hit the iceberg. But it's worth remembering that we had 2,500 shops. We employed more people than the Royal Navy put together. We had 1,000 shops in America. We were one of the few retailers to succeed in America. Marks and Spencer's, Tesco, they all failed. We succeeded because we didn't transport our formula across the Atlantic. We had a totally different setup there. We disrupted the UK market. We changed it completely. At the time, the demographics were such that it was young people that were buying most of the stuff in the high street, and the traditional jewelers were not appealing to them at all. So we broke that threshold barrier by selling much lower priced product, much more fashionable product, and doing it in a much more relaxed manner without the velvet pads and the bars on the windows. And we had sandwich boards, pop music and posters. And it was hugely successful. It allowed us to buy H. Samuel, Ernest Jones, Leslie Davis, most of our competitors, and to actually get to 50% of the market. For 2 years running, Ratner's group was the highest performing share on the stock market. 2 years running. Our shares went up more than any other company. But everything changed after that fateful day in April 1991. I think we were the worst performing share after that because our shares went down from £4.20 to 2p. And just to give you an idea of how unpopular we were, a customer in Manchester was looking for a rotary watch in the Arndale Centre. Now, he obviously wouldn't go into a Ratner store because of the adverse publicity. So he tried H. Samuel to buy this rotary watch, where he discovered to his horror that I owned that as well. So he then went into Leslie Davis. This time he asked the same question. Is this part of the Ratner's group? And the manager says, yes, unfortunately we are. So he left Leslie Davis. He went to Ernest Jones. He asked the question there. And the manager said, yeah, we were also part of the Ratner's group. So he was getting a bit fed up. And he left the Arndale Centre altogether to go to Watch of Switzerland, very upmarket. Think he's not a chance I would own that. So he went into Watch Switzerland and said, I'd like the rotary watch in the window. Manager said, certainly, sir. I'll wrap it up. He said to the manager, it's nice to find a jeweller around here that Ratner doesn't own. Manager said, look, I have to tell you this, that Watch of Switzerland is also part of the Ratner's group, even though it's very upmarket. At that point, he threw the watch at the manager, said, do you know something? I'm not even buying her the bloody watch now. Instead, he bought her a handbag from Salisbury's, which I also owned. So I got the last laugh there, but I didn't get many. We were refunding more money than we were selling at one point. And it ended up that, I have a lot to brag about, and you can only brag about all your achievements if you've made lots of mistakes. If you've just not made any mistakes, it does sound like bragging, but I'm very happy to brag because of all the mistakes I made. Now, with the crash in sales and the share price going down, it meant that I went severely into debt. And at one point in 1992, early 92, I was in a situation where I owed the bank £1 billion. So that was quite a worrying situation for me. And I got a phone call from the chief executive of Barclays Bank, Andrew Buxton. And I said, is it about the billion? And he said, yes, it is. You should come in and see us at the office. So I said, look, Andrew, we're not going to make the profit, the £200 million profit that you're expecting from us. It's going to be more like, we're going to miss it by about 300 million. Because in fact, we'd make a loss of £100 million. So Andrew says, that's quite a serious matter because it means you've broken your covenants. So I said, what does that mean? He says, it means that all the banks, and there's 65 that we've farmed this debt out into, 65 different banks, because it's too much money for us to take on board. It means that they can pull your loan and put you into liquidation. So I said, well, how can I avoid that? He says, well, you'll have to go round to all of the banks with a new business plan and persuade them that you're worth keeping going. So I said, well, I really don't fancy that because they're all over the world, these banks. So he said, well, it's not a matter of fancying it. Unless you do it, you'll go bust. So I said, well, what about this idea? I'm chairman and chief executive of the Ratner Group. What about if I simply hire a hotshot chairman from the city and he can go to the bank and explain about it and come up with a new business plan? And Andrew said, yes, that's a good idea. The less you do, the better. I like it. Good thinking. So I went to the city and I hired a hotshot chairman. And he ended up firing me. It wasn't a really good move. Yes, he fired me, and I went home, very miserable, and I went to bed for 7 years. Watched Countdown. I believed everything that was said about me in the papers, that I was unemployable. And my wife began to get a bit fed up with me being in the bedroom all the time because she said, we've got lots of debts. You're not earning any money. You've got tax bills. You've really got to get out there, forget what happened. So I said, well, nobody will give me a job. But the one thing that was keeping me sane, as it is during this lockdown, is cycling and exercise. It always turns a bad day into a good day. So I thought, I'm going to go into the health and fitness business because I can see the benefits. It's 1997. And there wasn't a health club where I lived in Henley. So I found this site. It was an old book warehouse. £750,000, which I didn't have. But I went to the bank to ask to borrow it. You know something, he didn't even offer me a cup of tea. He says it's a daft idea. But undeterred, I put an advert in the paper, in the Henley Standard, saying that I'll be opening this club. And if you join my club, I will waive the joining fee. Which was very generous of me, considering I haven't bought the place. But on the back of that advert for this non-existent club, and it was quite a good ad because it had an artist impression of how it's going to look. I made it look fabulous. It never actually ended up looking anything like that artist's impression, but that nobody really cared. There's a saying that you should under-promise and over-deliver. Well, I was over-promising and under-delivering. But nevertheless, I got 850 people to sign up with their direct debits for this club. And of course, when I went back to the bank, I was very confident, but he still wouldn't lend me the money. It took me 12 more banks to visit. And that's a good lesson there. You know, just because somebody says no doesn't mean to say the next person's going to say no. And it was the 13th bank manager who said yes, probably because his wife had joined my club, which was a bit of stroke of luck from my point of view. So 2.5 years later, I sold that health club for £4 million. Basically, this was a business that I hadn't had any money to put into. I was completely skint. I blagged my way into getting members, blagged my way into borrowing the money. And it felt fantastic that I was back on my feet again. I then used half of that money to invest in an online business called Gerald Online, back in the jewelry business. The turn of the century this was, when we just have nobody was buying, not like today, nobody was buying anything online. We just had the dot-com bubble burst. Nobody wanted to invest. But I felt this was a way, I was always about offering low prices, and this was a way of offering low prices to the public because you didn't have the overheads at the time online that you had in the shops in terms of staff costs, rent costs, lighting, security. Jewelry businesses are very expensive business to be in. So I felt I could cut the prices, and you could get onto Google actually very cheaply in those days because there were hardly anybody on Google. I know it sounds ridiculous, only less than 20 years ago, but you know, like the word eternity ring, which you'd buy, would cost me about £3. Today it costs £200 because there's so many people wanting to buy those words. So although everybody talks about the panacea that is the internet for shopping today, the costs are so much higher than they were when I started. And I make so much less money than I made then. But during this pandemic, nobody is getting engaged or getting married, so there isn't a lot of business going around. I would normally do about 70 or 80 speeches a year around Europe. I'm not doing any. Because I'm doing this, which I'm thankful for, but it's not, you know, I'm not traveling around Europe doing big corporate events, obviously, because there are no big corporate events going on. And I miss doing that enormously, but I'm not whinging. I'm not moaning. There's a lot of people that are whinging and moaning at the moment, but they're the people that haven't been through what I went through when I lost my job and I went to bed for 7 years. I can handle it because I've had setbacks. If you meet people who've never had a setback, and you often think there's something missing about them, lack of empathy, lack of sympathy. To be part of the human race, you have to have suffered. And that way, you know, I've lost all my income. And incidentally, my wife stood by me when I lost my job at Ratner's. She's standing by me now when, you know, it's been a tough year. She stood by me when I had other ventures that failed. Actually, I'm beginning to think she's a bit of a jinx. But anyway, I'm not complaining. I have my ups and downs, and I can take a bad year. Probably can't take 2 bad years, but let's hope I'll be back in business later on in the year. But I'm like everybody else. You know, somebody said we're all in the same storm, but some of us are on yachts, some of us are on canoes, and some of us are drowning. I would say I'm on a canoe, but I could tip off at any minute. Sorry if this speech is a bit sad, but you know, nobody died, and a friend of mine said, you're a much better person for everything you've been through. You're not as arrogant. So I said, well, I'd rather not be so nice and be richer, but this is the way it is. So I also said to my wife, because it was our anniversary, our 30 years anniversary last week. And I said to her, how would you like to celebrate? And she said, with a minute's silence. Because, you know, we have had, we all had in life, we have certain setbacks. You know, life is not an advert for fairy snow where there's a lovely couple, it's a sunny day and everyone's running around. Life is difficult. But if you accept that, it's no longer difficult. And it's only that I've been through what I've been through that I am now happy. I know I don't look happy. That's my face. I can't help it. But I so appreciate that I'm back on my feet compared to where I was. And I so appreciate my success second time around so much more than first time around. You know, I think it was Noel Coward said, the secret of success is managing failure, and you will fail. A nephew of mine was in tears because he's turned down for a job interview. I said, how many times have you been turned down? He said, 5 in a row. Nobody wants me. I said, well, the average actually, before somebody gets a job, is 8. So you're nearly there. In 3 goes, you'll get your job. So you're on the route to success. You need to embrace the fact you lost, they turned you down. Life isn't, you know, and these are the people that are suffering that have had it too easy. So, you know, even though you might complain that things go wrong, it toughens you up. And if it toughens you up, you obviously are in a better position to deal with the slings and arrows that will inevitably come your way. And as I said, you know, failure, it's the secret of success is to manage the failure. So when you do get these setbacks, they don't bother you. If I get a setback, which I get every day, well, not every day, but, you know, a lot of setbacks, it doesn't bother me so much because I understand. And business is very much like that. We're not in the public sector, however wonderful the nurses are and the police. They go into work every day, they get their pension at the end. There isn't a lot of risk involved. It's a lot of hard work, but it's not a lot of risk. The private sector is all about risk. And the more risk you take, the more successful you'll be. I took a massive amount of risks when I was running Ratner's. I went to America and everybody says it's the graveyard for British retailers. My shareholders said that we will turn on you with venom if you fail there. But I took a risk because I realized I had 50% of the market here and I couldn't carry on growing and I had to grow somewhere else. And America was a market that was 20 times the size of the UK. So, you know, the upside was much more than the downside. Yes, you take a risk. I don't smoke. Why don't I smoke? I love to smoke, but I don't smoke because the risk is against me on smoking. The odds are against me, sorry. But the odds of me succeeding in America were, in my view, in my favor. So I take risk where the odds are in my favor. But you've got to take risks in business. And it's very exciting taking risks because when they come off, you've taken a gamble and people advised you not to. It's a wonderful feeling. So it's not all in doom and gloom this year in terms of my, you know, no speeches and nobody buying jewelry, because I wrote a book. Sorry to plug it. It's called Reinvent Yourself, which I need to do, actually. I need to read this because I might need to reinvent. A lot of us will have to reinvent ourselves this year. Now, this book is very popular. It's currently at 214,000th most popular book on Amazon. So, am I running out of time? Unfortunately, this watch has stopped, so I'll have to carry on for a bit. But anyway, this is, I didn't buy it in Ratner as well, Gerald online. Yeah, this book is lots of ideas about how to reinvent yourself. Now, there's an old joke about this guy who goes to a betting shop every day and he bets on the horses, and every single day he loses his money. He never ever has a winner. And the bookmaker says to him, this is when betting shops were still around, the bookmaker says to him, well, when he says to the bookmaker, I can't bet the horses, what can I do? I can't bet the horse. Bookmaker says, why don't you ever bet on the dogs? There's dog racing going on. And he turns around and he says, what do I know about dogs? Now, this is a man who doesn't know a lot about horses because he loses every day. But people take that view in their jobs. They're terrible at their jobs. They're unhappy, but they won't give it up. Now, you're not going to be good in your job unless you love it. I love public speaking. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. And people that I talk to who have moved jobs have done it because they're unhappy, not because of the money. Somebody I know who worked for The Economist, most prestigious thing you can do. She said she wants to leave. I said, how can you leave The Economist? She says, because I don't like it, I'm unhappy. And she left and went on a startup with tremendous risk, but she turned out that it was the best thing she ever did. And it's actually proven that if you do move jobs, this was not the case in the olden days where it was a job for life. It is proven now that if you move jobs, your prospects have improved enormously. And if you start your own business, because I didn't start Ratner's, but I started the health club. And you get a lot more pleasure starting a business from scratch, building it from nothing, that it's your baby, you created it, than just going in. However, this woman I was listening to, she's fabulous on Desert Island Discs or something. She was running EasyJet. She ran The Guardian, then she ran ITV. She's a professional CEO that goes from one place. Nobody can be more successful than her. But it's not her business. She just goes in and stands watch, is in charge for 7 years, and then she moves on. You get much more pleasure actually starting a business yourself. Now, I'm not going to contradict myself by saying this, that 8 out of 10 new businesses fail. So don't start a new business, take somebody else's over. Now, I still think that's starting a business. So if you want to open up a nail bar in Maidenhead, don't add another nail bar to the already 4 or 5 that are there. Take one over, however unsuccessful it is. Because, or if it's a restaurant or anything, because you don't have to put in a shop front. You don't have to put all the fixtures and fittings. You will get a lot of the customers that went to the previous business as well, their goodwill. You won't have the crippling costs that is the reason why 8 out of 10 businesses fail. If you take over somebody else's, and you'll be able to do that for a song, believe me, because people are exiting the high street like it's a gold rush or something. So there'll be opportunities there. Take over somebody else's business and make it better. It's a much cheaper entrance to a business. And you're not adding the competition. I live in Cookham. There's 4 restaurants. It's a small village. There's been 4 restaurants for years. The reason why there's 4 restaurants, because that's about as much as it can take. If there's 5 restaurants, everyone's sales will be down 20%. So don't buy another restaurant in Cookham. Take somebody over, and there'll still be 4 in there. And you won't have to spend a lot of shop fitting and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be Cookham. It can be anywhere, and there'll be plenty of places. So that's my book, Reinvent Yourself. It took me 3 years to write it. And it's my second book. My first book was The Rise and Fall and Rise Again of Gerald Ratner. I won't be bothering to write another book because I'm getting a bit old these days and it's too much like hard work. But I might be doing some television stuff because I got a phone call from Sky TV last week. Now, you might wonder why Sky TV are phoning me, because I was actually featured in a program that put on air in 2008 called The 50 Worst Mistakes of All Time. Great program. Now I won, I don't know if the word won is correct, but I came first. I beat people like, there was a guy called Wayne Saunders who owned 10% of Apple, and he sold it for $800, his stake of 10% in Apple in 1976. That stake now is worth about it's worth about $1 billion, I think, or 10 billion. I don't know. What does it matter? He lost a lot, but I beat him. So I think, why are they phoning me? I'm the biggest idiot of all time. But they say, no. I say, you're doing another program? Have I won again? They said, no. We're doing a program where you'll be helping companies out of difficulty because you've turned your fortunes around. So I said, well, it sounds a bit boring because, it's been done to death, that sort of program. They said, no, you'll enjoy it. It's on Sky One. So I watched Sky One. It's not really good. Actually, I shouldn't criticize. I haven't learned my mistake of biting the golden hand that feeds me yet. But anyway, I said, okay, I'll do it, because they offer me a lot of money. So if somebody offers me a lot of money, I'll do anything, quite honestly, So, you can't pick and choose, can you? Life is difficult enough to get business. So I went home to my wife to tell her that I'm going to be on television. I got my own show. I was quite excited about that. She said, don't do it. I said, why? She says, because you'll say something stupid and you'll wreck your new business just like you wrecked your old business. She always builds me up like that. She says, what will you do then? You'll be watching Countdown again. We'll have no money. What will you do? And I said, I will just start all over again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. So we've got quite a lot of questions coming in. I will mention this because my internet broke up earlier, that we have a feedback poll that'll be coming in at the end. But yeah, so we start off with some questions. Here's a very good first one. Is there a piece of advice or phrase in your career that's been really useful or motivational that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, after what I've said, I think the answer to that question is quite an easy one. Don't give up, because you will be knocked back. Well, the best deals that I've done and the best things that I've done have been the most difficult, and they've been the most rewarding. When I started the health club, I was knocked back so many times, couldn't get the money. Everybody says you wouldn't get off the ground. It was a wonderful thing to actually prove everyone wrong. H. Samuel, when I bought H. Samuel, nobody would go for H. Samuel with an aggressive bid because they owned over 50% of the company. Although it was a public company, the family owned over 50%. But I made the chairman. I said to him, look, we'll merge. It won't be a takeover. You can be the chairman of the bigger company and I'll be the chief executive. And he agreed to that. I then went to see a barrister and I said, how can I get rid of him? And he said, well, you'd have to keep him for 3 months because if you get rid of him on day one, he'll sue you and say that, you never meant to offer him the job in the first place. So I waited 3 months and then I fired him. That came back to haunt me because I was fired as a chairman, but, live by the sword, die by the sword. But, I don't play things by the book. Last week, my daughter came into me in tears because Vodafone had given her a bill for £1,150. I said, how could you have £1,150 a month? She said, I don't. It's normally about £40. We phoned Vodafone, they wouldn't. They said, it is how it is. So in the end, I was so frustrated, I phoned the chairman of Vodafone. And I said, this is Superintendent Donald Watson from the Met. And his secretary put me through. strange enough. And then when I came through to the chairman, I said, actually, it's not. It's Gerald Ratner, and my daughter's got a problem with her phone. And he seemed so relieved that I wasn't a policeman. Obviously, he might have been up to something, I don't know. That he was very helpful, and he put it all right. And it was because the phone was actually dialing itself all around the world, and they solved the problem. So, you know, I don't play by the book. I don't do anything illegal, although actually it probably is illegal impersonating a policeman, but I don't give a shit about the police. And there you go. So, you know, the answer is in business is to break all the rules. Rules are there to be broken.
Very good piece of advice. Christian's got a question for you.
Yeah, so I'll ask that one in person. So you obviously spoke a lot about after, shall we say, the collapse of the first business, the jewelers.
Yes.
You mentioned that you started like a health club. And the way that you did that is by going around and essentially, again, like talking to clients, getting them verbally, getting them yourself. And on that note, how much of doing something like that, starting something from scratch, is down to your own grinding versus finding a good team? Did you do that on your own, or did you find that some of the people that you were working with helped you a lot? Because I find that a lot of people we work with, they grind and grind and grind. Would it be useful for them to pair up, or is it about that grinding? What do you think?
I'm an extremely lazy person. If I can avoid work, I will do it. In fact, I don't work. Since I started working the only time I've actually worked is when I had to work behind a shop. I was 15, and even then I spent most of the time in the betting shop. I try to avoid working. If you are running something, you're in charge. Imagine yourself as the manager of a football team. You are not doing the running around. You've got a centre forward who's out there to score goals. You've got a goalkeeper that's there to stop goals. You've got a guy in the middle of the park who's good at passing the ball around. You don't go on the pitch and you start heading the ball. But make no mistake that it's your baby, it's your focus, it's your vision that's going out on the pitch. You've instructed those players to do precisely what you want them to do. And if they don't do it, you drop them. But you don't undermine them by going on the pitch and start kicking the ball. You are the manager of a football team. You're the manager. Managers are normally, or entrepreneurs are normally useless at routine day-to-day stuff. That's why they're successful entrepreneurs. You can't be all things to all men. You'll be good at one thing and bad at something else. And entrepreneurs are not good at lifting heavy weights, doing the basics, you know, running the nitty gritty, which of course you have to do in every business. So you have to delegate. And I did that with the health club. I got a guy called Tony, who was brilliant. In 1997, I couldn't work out a computer, but he had all the members on the computer. Everything was done in terms of, in those days, and collecting the subscriptions, the monthly subscriptions, all done online. He was brilliant like that. Actually, I fired him as well in the end, but you know, there you go. I've got this bad reputation of firing people. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I fired him because we had an outdoor swimming pool. Now, we had an outdoor swimming pool in that health club because we couldn't afford to put a roof on it. But in fact, it was the best thing we ever did. Every David Lloyd or health club you see has an indoor pool. Because it's based on exercise, you know, it's not based on playing around. But actually, people don't like swimming up and down. If you go to health clubs, a lot of the swimming pools are empty. It's the gyms that are full because that's where you lose your weight. So if you're not going to lose weight by doing those lengths, you might as well have a pool that you'll enjoy. And everyone loved our outdoor pool. They were in it in February because it was heated all the year round. So we did the opposite. We often do the opposite of what everybody wants. But the answer to your question is delegate. You won't. I've started off 3 successful businesses, multi-million pound businesses. I would never have, if I'd have done that on my own or with people who hadn't, you know, who just runners or something, I wouldn't stand a chance. You know, it was the other people. I hired the right people, and that is a prerequisite to success.
Thank you. Really interesting answer.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. So the next question we have is from Joseph. Did stakeholders in your old business give the basis or help to strengthen your new business, or did they just discard you and go on the same basis as, you know, their previous opinion of you?
They discarded me and still had the opinion of my previous. They actually, when I started off my Gerald Online business, I was initially going to call it Ratner's Online, and the chairman stopped me using my own name, Ratner's. He said that it was, people would think it's part of his, which is now named the Signet Group. He changed it to the Signet Group. He said, if you start it up calling Ratner's, they'll still think it's part of us and we'll suffer from the stigma that you created and all that. So he tried to stop me. I sued him and lost, unfortunately. So, yeah, they did everything they could. In fact, also when I got an investment, they tried to stop my business, my Ratner's Online, which became Gerald Online. They also tried to stop my gym because I had an investor initially rather than the bank. And they informed that investor that they shouldn't get involved with me. So they did everything they could to stop me. I don't know why they were hostile towards me, but in 2010, because Gerald and I were so successful, I actually made a bid for my old company, or the UK division. I bid £400 million for it, and that would have been a great story to have bought it back. That's how close I came to it. But unfortunately, they turned that down as well. So they didn't, you know, they never buried the hatchet. But the good news was that the chairman, I shouldn't say this. You see, this is why I always get into trouble. But the good news was the chairman died in the end. So, you know, it's, but he was old. So there you go. So that gave me, but you shouldn't speak ill of the dead. But I was quite pleased on that day because he'd fired me and he tried to stop me with other businesses. I mean, you can't go to his funeral and be hypocritical about it, can you? If you've got an enemy, you've got an enemy, and that's it.
Thank you for that answer.
Sorry about that. Ignore that last remark.
So we have another question from Danielle. So earlier you mentioned the difficulty with the American market and something that was really not approached too much by British retailers. What would you say is the main difference between the British and American markets in particular, and why do you think it's so difficult to get into? Everything
is different in America. They speak the same language as us. So you think you get this false sense of security that is similar. They are so different, I can't tell you. I'm not going to go into Meghan, that's why that didn't work or stuff like that. But there is that culture difference. And I could see that a mile off. And we look at Donald Trump like some idiot. He's like every businessman I've ever met in America. They're all like that, very egotistical, but actually very bright. And whatever you say, I know people don't think Donald Trump is Trump, he is. So the key to all of that is, when I went over there, I realized that the worst thing I could do was try and export my formula from the UK, however successful it was. Marks and Spencer's, as I said, tried to do that. Tesco tried to do that. Everybody tried to do it. They all failed. So what I did is I simply flew out to America, went round the malls. And in America, unlike the UK, they tell you everything. You just go to the mall owners and they tell you, because it's a percentage of sales that you have to pay, they will tell you exactly what every retailer is taking. And in every mall that I went to, it was a company called Sterling that was taking more money than any other jewelers. I could see why, you know, they were really, one of the reasons why they were so successful was because everything in America is on credit. This was in 1986, when very little was on credit in the UK. And they were charging an interest rate of 45% to their customers, an in-house store card. Nobody seemed to care that their interest rate was 45%. In fact, they were all on computers even in those days, and they used to phone up their customer and say, it's your nephew's birthday next week, because they have all that data. Would you like a signet ring? And you've got enough credit that you could buy it on your current account. And they say, oh, gee, that's great. You know, in England, if you phone somebody up in those days with a phone call like that, they'd think you're bonkers and put the phone down. But in America, they think, oh, that's a good idea, I'll buy it. You know, they're very receptive to all that sort of stuff. So we bought this company because we could see their formula worked. We paid ridiculously over the odds, 125 million for it, but we didn't care because we were buying the management and we were buying their concept, and we wanted to succeed in America. And we expanded that business to 1,000 shops. Today, it's 3,000 shops with that exactly the same formula. People say, oh, Ratner's went bust. It didn't go bust. It's still the biggest jewelers in the world. And we set the foundation there for a successful American business simply because we bought a smallish business which we could see could be rolled out successfully. Just like that's how McDonald's started. You see a concept that works and you think, can this be rolled out? It's not rocket science. It's not like all these companies that bring in a whole load of lawyers and a whole load of analysts. You know, I call it paralysis by analysis because they spend too much time studying it and all that sort of stuff. Tesco's opened up a store for a year to test it all out. It's all, you don't need all that. It's common sense. And that's why we succeeded in America. That's why we're still, you know, the world's largest jewelry business. Because it's a different market.
Yeah. We have another question from Joseph, who's asking, what advice would you give when starting a jewelry business?
Don't.
That's the answer I was expecting.
Well, the reason that we were successful was because we had the benefit of scale. The independents couldn't compete with us because we had loads of money. We could tap our shareholders with rights issue. If you're a public company, you go to your shareholders and say, I'd like to raise £100 million, please, to invest in new stock or whatever, make up any reason. And they'll give you £100 million. And that means we could have huge ranges, huge shops, lots of lines. How can the independent compete with that? They can't. So it's very difficult. But I mean, if you are starting up a jewelry business, I mean, I would think that price is still very important. We were successful because we offered incredibly low prices. If you look at the successful retailers today, they are Sports Direct, they are Primark, they are value retailers. You look at the ones that have suffered, they're sort of the Jaegers of this world, middle market. Britain, unlike America, is a low price ticket market. In America, people are prepared to get into a huge amount of debt for jewelry. They're not. They're prepared to get into debt for cars and houses, but they're not prepared as yet to get into huge debt for jewelry. That's not number one on their priority list. So, sorry, that's the dog trying to come in. He's telling me he wants his walk. You have to wait. It's not time for your walk yet, okay? So, sorry about that. He's kept me busy in lockdown, haven't you, Benji? So what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I think that they're not prepared to get into debt to buy jewelry. They want you have to offer low prices. You have to don't try and win any awards for prestige. I think that if you can offer the public low prices in jewelry, you'll still do well, just like I did well. Because let's face it, I mean, what I did was not reinventing the wheel. All I did was I reduced the average price of jewelry from £100 to £20 in those days, which immediately made it more accessible to a lot more people. I mean, it's not very complicated. You talk to retailers today and they make it all complicated. It is not. There's certain rules that you have to stick to. We always displayed our diamond rings 42 inches from the ground, because the average woman was 5'4" and the trajectory of her eyesight would fall at 42 inches. You can't break rules like that. You have to stick to it. So the goods have to be well lit and look good. You can't just have a jumble. We had very high standards in terms of display. So we made the product look good. And we offered a lot. We were the first people that offered a 30-day money-back guarantee. Be confident, you know. You've got to offer the public a hell of a lot. We had a 5-star deal, 30-day money-back guarantee. If they saw it cheaper anywhere else, it was double the difference, we would pay them back. We offered them free insurance on diamond rings. The reason why the retailers have lost out to online business is not for any other reason, but the retailers haven't offered enough. You go in a shop, you're ignored. And when you're not ignored, they don't know what they're talking about. If you try and buy a laptop in Currys or something, well, I won't mention Currys, but anyway, they don't know, the salesman will not be able to tell you the bullet points about that laptop. You will not get service. The customer's been taken for granted and not been offered enough. Whereas Amazon offers you a fantastic deal. Next day delivery, ridiculously low prices, no quibble money back guarantee, reviews on all the different things. They tell you clearly what it does, what it doesn't do. They actually offer you a better service than Debenhams did. You walked into Debenhams, you were totally ignored, and then, you know, the person working behind the counter was not trained well enough to help you anyway. So they had it too easy for too long. Sorry to have a rant.
That's okay. Alex has a question for you.
Thank you, Tom. So, Gerald, I've heard when you said that nowadays it's way better to, when you find a domain you want to activate in and turn it into a business, it's better to find somebody who's already active in there, see if we can occupy that in order to save ourselves from a lot of the struggles and financial difficulties. But on that topic, how does one generate ideas? In your sense, how do you generate the new ideas into businesses? How do you make up your mind into setting up on something? Because I think this is one of the biggest problems when nowadays when people are thinking to open up or start up a business.
Well, you know, in 1997, I lived near Henley, and there was a lot of people beginning to become very wealthy, and there was a lot of middle-aged women around in their 40s that I knew this personal trainer, and she was doing extremely well. And I could see there was a huge pent-up demand for women whose children are perhaps, you know, grown up a bit, and they didn't have a lot to do, and they started to wanting to look good. I know that is what everyone does today, but I could just see that happening in the 90s, that there was a demand for, we've now got our Pilates and yoga lessons, but then I could see there was demand for personal training. There was demand for women to spend some of their day getting fit and looking better and enjoying the benefit of exercise because it makes you feel good. So I felt this was the business to go to. In the turn of the century, I felt that the internet was a great way of getting a product to the public at a much cheaper price. And I could see the advent of phones and stuff like that. I could see that there was a possibility. It was very slow to start with, but I could see that. And I could see that in the jewelry business in the 80s, that young people, the demographics was such that 16s to 24s had a lot of disposable income, and they were buying stuff from Topshop and Next and stuff like that. But they weren't buying jewelry. And I felt if the jewelry was in their price bracket, that they would buy that as well. So I go into a new business, I look around, I see what is hot, what is happening, where is there a lot of people suddenly where their demand is going to be created. I mean, I'm not joking now, you've just seen my dog, and he reminded me the boom in dogs. So there'll be a lot of people with dogs that'll be wanting to buy stuff for them, and, you know, maybe something related to dogs. I don't know, but it's that sort of idea that you just get a feel for what the public are interested in at that time, where there's a demand and it is not fulfilled. It's no good going into something that is already well catered for. It's where it isn't catered for, like there was no health club in Henley, yet everyone wanted to get fit. You know, that's where I look for a new venture. I might have to find one because I don't know if things are going to go back to normal. It took us after this. I'm old enough. I'm not quite old enough, but after the Second World War, I don't want to sort of be miserable about this, but things were very bad for a long time because of the fact that our economy was shot to pieces. In fact, we only paid back our war debt in 2006. But the 50s, people used to say, why did we bother to win the war? You know, we are really struggling. You know, we're living in prefab houses. Things are really tough. So we are going to get that. But having said that, the idea that you're going to be launching a successful business and you can't fail in a boom and you will fail in a recession is rubbish. The success or failure of a business is to do whether it's a good business or a bad business, not if there's a recession going on or if there's a boom going on. But we read too much into that.
Great, thank you. We have a last question from Christian.
Yep. So I just wanted to ask, have you ever thought of starting up or opening up shop in a different line of business outside of jewelry? And do you think with the skills that you have, you would make it, well, you would be good at it, essentially, the skills that you have right now? Could you pivot off of it? And if so, why didn't you in a way? Or is it that jewelry is the sort of the focus that you're going for?
No, I mean, I'm not a great jeweler. I don't know a lot about jewelry. They'll put that on my tombstone. But no, I'm a retailer. I was talking to somebody in the university who's just doing marketing, which is a great thing to do, because in the end, whatever business you're in, whether it's jewelry or clothes or restaurants or whatever, it's all to do with marketing, and marketing is all to do with selling. And selling is the most important thing that we can all do. That's what I'm doing now. Don't be a wallflower about selling. The reason my health club was successful, because all health clubs are pretty similar, was because we screamed it from the rooftops. You know, when I was a kid, I used to go down to Petticoat Lane with my dad, and the busiest stalls were the one that's in the East End. The busiest stalls were the ones where the guy who was selling the stuff was shouting the loudest. There's nothing sophisticated about it. And when somebody phones me up and tries to sell things, a lot of people think, oh God, get lost. I don't do that. I respect somebody for selling. You know, I listen to what they have to say. You know, there are two very successful retailers at the moment, which is Boohoo, that just bought Topshop, and Essex, that just bought Debenhams. I think I got that the right way around. Unbelievably successful. They're bigger than Marks and Spencer's in market value. How have they got where they are? They send billions, well, not billions, but millions of emails out every week. That's how they got started. Selling, hard selling, driving you, you know, you get emails the whole time after you think, you say, oh God, what do I want another email? But it works. You know, the more you sell, the more you'll sell. So the answer to your question is, it doesn't have to be jewelry. I can do anything. I'm like the bloke who, you know, goes to the betting shop and loses on the horses every day, and then there's no horse running, and he says, have a bet on the dogs. I said, what do I know about dogs? Yeah, I would, it doesn't really matter. I feel that I'm in the business of selling, and that's what we're all in the business of, and that is the most important thing. You're always selling.
Great, thank you very much.
Well, Christian, thank you so much for asking me down. I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry I made that joke about my ex-chairman, but apart from that, I did behave quite well.
That's okay. We've had a lot of comments saying it was very thought-provoking and very interesting. So thank you very much for coming and inspiring all of us to go for better things. I will put the feedback sheet in the feedback poll in the chat very soon so that everyone can say what they thought of it, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I'm sure a lot of us did. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, Gerald, for this.
That was a great pleasure, and thank you. I'm going to fill in this event poll to say how much I enjoyed this event. It's just come up on my screen.